They always underestimate the girl who talks to animals. I'm Xiaoniao, the Emperor's chief pet keeper, and my husband just made the biggest mistake of his life. I caught General Jian whispering sweet words to Lady Mei under the whispering willow, planning to steal the Empress's jewels and overthrow our emperor. My prized parrot Ming repeated their entire conversation word for word. The man I loved, who promised to cherish me forever, only married me for palace access. He laughed about how blind I was, how useful my position made me. He even plans to blame my beloved animals when the emperor mysteriously dies. Jean thinks I'm just a foolish woman surrounded by mindless creatures. He has no idea what we're capable of. My animals see everything, hear everything. And now, reborn in my fury, I will use every paw, wing, and claw at my disposal to expose his treason and watch his world burn. My name is Xiaoniao, which means little bird, though I am not particularly small. The name comes from my gift, my ability to understand the languages of animals. Not just birds, though they speak most clearly to me, but all creatures of the Imperial Menagerie. I moved through the Emperor's gardens, my fingertips trailing along the ornate bird cages where colorful parrots ruffled their feathers in greeting. Around me, the Imperial Menagerie buzzed with life. Monkeys chattered in the trees, cats prowled silently through flower beds, and the Emperor's prized panda, Fu, munched bamboo in contented silence. Ming, be patient, I whispered to my favorite parrot, stroking his brilliant blue feathers as he squawked indignantly. The Emperor will arrive soon, and you must be perfect. The bronze doors swung open, and Emperor Wei entered, his expression tense. Court politics had been particularly brutal today, I could tell from the tightness around his eyes. Your Majesty. I bowed deeply as Fu abandoned his bamboo and waddled toward the Emperor. A rare sight, as the panda was notoriously temperamental around visitors. Only you could make this beast love me, little bird? The Emperor smiled, his worries momentarily forgotten as he stroked Fu's black and white head. Animals understand more than people think, I replied simply. What I didn't add was that they spoke to me in voices as clear as any humans, sharing secrets few would believe possible. If only my generals were as loyal as your creatures, the Emperor sighed. From beyond the garden walls came the rhythmic march of the Imperial Guard. At their head rode General Jian, his armor gleaming in the afternoon sun. Tall and broad-shouldered, with keen eyes that missed nothing, Jian commanded respect with his mere presence, those eyes now fixed on me, lingering longer than propriety allowed. I felt heat rise to my cheeks, unused to such attention from a man of his station. I had spent my life among animals, finding their company preferable to humans who mocked my strange ways or dismissed my talents as mere tricks. Your Majesty. General Jian dismounted and bowed deeply. The northern borders are secure. Excellent work, General. The Emperor nodded. I see you've noticed our little bird. Her talents keep our Imperial Menagerie in perfect harmony. Indeed. Jean's smile was warm, his gaze intent. Perhaps the pet keeper would honor me with a tour of the gardens sometime. Before I could form a coherent response, Ming the parrot called out in perfect imitation of the Emperor's voice. A wise choice, General. A wise choice. The men laughed, and I hushed the bird, embarrassed. But as the days passed, General Jian returned frequently, first for that tour, then with gifts for my animals, then with poetry written in his strong hand. His interest seemed genuine, his admiration for my abilities sincere. Most people think I merely feed and clean up after animals, I admitted during one of our walks through the cherry blossom groves. I see beyond that, he responded, taking my hand in his. You have a rare gift, Xiaoniao, and beauty to match it. When he proposed marriage after just 2 months of courtship, the palace buzzed with gossip. Why would a decorated general choose the peculiar pet keeper? But I, dizzy with unexpected happiness, didn't question my good fortune. The wedding was small but elegant, with the emperor himself giving his blessing. For the first time in my life, I felt truly seen, not as the odd girl who whispered to birds, but as a woman worthy of love and respect. Yet even on our wedding night, I noticed Ming refused to sing for the new couple, turning his back when Jian approached his cage. And in the garden, the emperor's hunting dogs growled softly when my new husband passed too close. "They're just jealous," Jian laughed, pulling me close against his chest. "They'll learn to share you." I pushed my concerns aside, choosing to believe that my animal friends would eventually warm to my husband as I had. But as weeks became months, their unease only grew, and so did the distance in Jian's eyes. 6 months into our marriage, I found myself increasingly alone. Jian's military duties took him away more frequently, often at odd hours that made little sense for official business. When questioned, his answers came too quickly, rehearsed excuses about troop movements and border patrols. "I'll return by morning," he promised one evening, kissing my forehead absently before disappearing again into the night. The palace cats, who roamed freely at all hours, meowed urgently when I passed, trying to lead me down specific corridors. The monkeys grew agitated when certain messengers arrived. Even Fu the panda seemed to watch the garden gates with unusual intensity. One evening, while polishing Ming's ornate cage, I noticed the parrot was unusually quiet, watching me with unblinking eyes. "What's troubling you, old friend?" I asked, offering him a slice of peach, his favorite treat. Ming ruffled his feathers, and then, in a voice that was perfectly, chillingly like Jian's, spoke, "The Empress's jewels will fetch enough to pay the northern garrisons, once they're loyal to us instead of that fool on the throne." I froze, the polishing cloth slipping from my fingers. Ming continued, adopting a feminine voice I didn't recognize. "But what about your pet keeper wife? She's always watching with those strange eyes." Then Jian's voice again. "She suspects nothing, my sweet lotus blossom. She's useful for now. Her position gives me access to places in the palace guards can't reach. Meet me by the Whispering Willow tonight." The cage clattered to the floor. Ming flapped nervously, returning to his normal squawking. "Say it again," I whispered, my hands shaking. "Please, Ming." But the parrot only tilted his head, as if confused by my distress. That night, instead of confronting Jian directly, I followed him, not personally, but through the eyes and ears of the palace cats. They slipped silently behind him as he made his way not to the military barracks, but to a secluded pavilion near the Whispering Willow. A woman waited there, beautiful and richly dressed, Lady May, the daughter of a border province governor. My stomach twisted as I watched through a cat's eyes as Jian took the woman in his arms, their kiss passionate and familiar. "Has she discovered anything?" Lady May asked when they finally separated. "The pet keeper?" Jian laughed, and the sound cut through me like a blade. "She's too blinded by love to see what's before her eyes. By the time she realizes the truth, I'll be general of the northern provinces, and you'll be at my side. And the emperor? We'll face an unfortunate accident once we have the jewels to finance our coup. The palace animals will be blamed. Fitting, don't you think? My wife's precious creatures turning against their master." I felt something break inside me, not just my heart, but something deeper. The illusion of love shattered, revealing the cold calculation beneath. Jian had never loved me. I had been nothing but a tool, a means to access the palace's inner sanctum. As I stumbled back to my quarters, tears streaming down my face, the animals of the palace seemed to gather around me, cats twining between my ankles, birds landing. On nearby branches, even the old tortoise from the imperial pond had somehow made its way to my path. In their eyes, I saw not pity, but something else entirely. Something like rage. And deep within me, something new began to stir in response. A determination, a purpose. He used me for access to the palace, for proximity to the emperor, for my animals. Very well then. He would learn exactly what those animals could do. 3 days passed in a fog of betrayal. I moved through my duties like a ghost, feeding the animals, attending the emperor, smiling emptily at Jian's lies. Each night, I cried myself to sleep. Each morning, I woke with a clearer purpose forming in my mind. On the 4th day, I ventured to the farthest corner of the imperial gardens, where ancient Shao, the tortoise, had lived for over a century. Legend claimed he had witnessed the founding of the dynasty itself, and I often sought his wisdom in troubled times. "I need your counsel, wise one," I whispered, kneeling beside his pond. Shu regarded me with time-worn eyes. When he spoke in my mind, his voice creaked like old temple doors. "The betrayal cuts deep, little bird." "He used me," I replied, tears threatening again. "For my position, for access to the emperor. And now he plots treason with another woman. What will you do?" Shu asked simply. "I thought to tell the emperor directly, but Jian has been poisoning his ears against me. Small comments about my peculiar ways, suggestions that perhaps I am not entirely stable. If I accuse the emperor's favored general without proof, I will not be believed." "Then find proof," the tortoise replied. "How? He is careful, cautious." Shu's ancient eyes gleamed with unexpected mischief. "You are not alone, little bird. You never have been." I looked up and realized the garden had come alive with presents. Birds perched on nearby branches, squirrels paused on tree trunks, cats emerged from flower beds, and monkeys hung from low branches, all watching, all listening. "They have always been your eyes and ears," Sho continued. "Now let them be your hands as well." For the first time since discovering Jian's betrayal, I felt something other than despair. The spark of an idea ignited, spreading like wildfire through my mind. "He used me for my animals," I whispered, a cold smile forming on my lips. "Let me use my animals against him." That night, in my private quarters, I held counsel with my most trusted allies. Ming the parrot perched on my shoulder, while around me gathered cats with ears that missed nothing, monkeys with clever fingers, dogs whose loyalty never wavered, and birds who could fly to any window in the palace. "Jian thinks you simple creatures, beneath notice," I told them. "That blindness will be his downfall." I assigned roles with careful precision. The palace cats would become my spies, slipping through hidden passages to monitor meetings and report conversations. The monkeys, with their nimble fingers, would serve as saboteurs, removing important documents, disrupting signals, creating strategic chaos. The palace dogs, who had always distrusted Jian, would accidentally disrupt his plans, losing messages, and blocking paths at crucial moments. And Ming, clever, observant Ming, would be my ultimate weapon. The parrot had an uncanny ability to memorize and repeat conversations verbatim, including discussions of treason that could condemn Jian before the entire court. As my animal allies dispersed into the night, I stood at my window, watching the moon rise over the imperial city. The meek pet keeper was gone. In her place stood a woman reborn in betrayal's fire, her heart hardened with purpose. "You wanted the throne," I whispered toward Jian's quarters. "Let us see how you fare against the creatures you deemed worthless." The imperial palace transformed into a battlefield, though none of the humans, save one, fully understood the war being waged in its halls and gardens. General Jian's carefully constructed plans began to unravel in ways that seemed, at first, like mere coincidences. Important messages to co-conspirators disappeared en route, later found shredded in monkey enclosures. Military maps were mysteriously soaked by accidental water spills. Twice the stable cats spooked Jian's horse before crucial meetings, causing him to arrive late and disheveled before important officials. After the third such accident, Jian stormed into our quarters, his face thunderous with barely contained rage. "Your animals are becoming a nuisance," he snapped, yanking off his mud-splattered boots. The Emperor's falcon nearly took my eye. Today, when I was inspecting the guard. "How strange," I replied mildly, feeding Ming a slice of persimmon. "They have never behaved this way before." Jian's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Perhaps they need a firmer hand. Or perhaps their keeper is losing control." The threat lay unspoken between us. If I was deemed unfit for my duties, I would lose not only my position, but access to my beloved animals as well. That night, a palace cat reported that Jian had met, again, with Lady May. Their plan was accelerating. Troops loyal to Lady May's father were already moving closer to the capital, disguised as merchant caravans. The Empress's jewels would be stolen during the upcoming autumn festival, when security would be focused on the public celebrations rather than the private royal chambers. I knew I needed concrete evidence to present to the Emperor. Through my animal network, I learned that Jian kept detailed plans in a lacquered box beneath our bed. While he attended military drills the next day, I sent 2 of my cleverest monkeys to retrieve the documents. They succeeded brilliantly, bringing me scrolls that confirmed my worst fears. Detailed maps of the palace, schedules of guard rotations, even a list of officials to be eliminated, with the Emperor's name at the top. I carefully copied the most damning sections before having the monkeys return the originals. But Jian was growing suspicious. He began checking his belongings regularly, setting traps to catch intruders. One of the palace cats was nearly caught, spying on a meeting between Jian and a northern commander sympathetic to his cause. Worse still, he started to isolate me from the palace. He complained to the Emperor about my excessive attachment to the animals, suggesting it was affecting my mental stability. "I worry for my wife's health, Your Majesty," he said with practiced concern during a private audience I learned about, from a bird perched outside the window. "Perhaps she needs rest, away from the pressures of the menagerie." The Emperor, who had always valued my services, nevertheless agreed that I seemed changed in recent weeks. "A short period of rest might be beneficial," he conceded. That evening, Imperial Guards, men loyal to Jian, escorted me to my quarters with instructions that I was to remain there for my own well-being. My access to the menagerie was restricted, to supervised visits making direct communication with my animal allies nearly impossible. Alone in my chambers, I felt the walls closing in around me. Jian had outmaneuvered me, using my own behavior against me. Without my animals, without evidence anyone would believe, I was powerless to stop his plot against the throne. As darkness fell, I sank to my knees beside the window, tears of frustration burning my eyes. "I have failed," I whispered to the empty room. Then came a soft tap at the window. A tiny sparrow perched on the sill, its beak holding a minuscule scroll. With trembling fingers, I retrieved the message. Just a few characters in the monkey keeper's handwriting. "The animals remain loyal. Command us." Hope rekindled in my chest. They had not abandoned me. Even without my direct presence, my animal allies continued their silent war against Jian and his conspirators. Through the sparrow, I sent new instructions, more specific, more daring than before. The autumn festival was 3 days away. Jian's coup would fail, but only if my plan worked perfectly, and if I was willing to sacrifice everything, including, possibly my own life, to see justice done. The morning of the autumn festival dawned clear and bright. From my confined quarters, I could hear the sounds of celebration beginning in the city below. Drums beating, children laughing, the scent of festival foods wafting up from the palace kitchens. I sat before my mirror, carefully applying the traditional festival makeup, when Jian entered without knocking. He wore his full ceremonial armor, resplendent with gold and crimson. "You should be well enough to attend the festivities," he announced, watching me with calculating eyes. The Emperor has specifically requested your presence. It would raise questions if you were absent. I nodded demurely, keeping my gaze downcast to hide the anticipation gleaming there. I would not want to disappoint His Majesty. As we walked toward the Imperial Pavilion where the ceremony would take place, I noticed subtle signs that my plan was already in motion. A monkey scampered across our path, disappearing with what looked suspiciously like a military seal. Palace cats lounged, in strategic positions, their eyes following Jian's every move, and circling high above, barely visible against the blue sky, flew the Emperor's prized falcon. The pavilion bustled with activity. Nobles in their finest silks mingled with military officers standing at attention, while servants hurried to fulfill last-minute demands. The Emperor sat upon his ceremonial throne, with the Empress beside him, her famous jewels catching the sunlight. Jian guided me to our designated position, then leaned close to whisper in my ear, "Stay here. Do not wander." As he moved away to confer with other officers, I caught sight of Lady May entering the pavilion, her beauty enhanced by elaborate robes and jewels. Our eyes met briefly, hers filled with cold triumph, mine with quiet determination. She thought, today would bring her power. I knew differently. The ceremony began with traditional music and dance. As the performers whirled before the imperial couple, I noticed the palace dogs taking positions near all exits. In the rafters of the pavilion, birds perched, watching. The old tortoise, Shu, had somehow been brought to a small pool near the Emperor's feet, an unusual honor explained away as a symbol of longevity for the festival. When the Emperor rose to deliver his address, a subtle signal passed through the animal ranks. The moment had arrived. "As we celebrate another bountiful autumn," the Emperor began, "we give thanks for the harmony and loyalty that sustains our great empire." A commotion at the back of the pavilion interrupted him. Two imperial guards dragged forward a struggling figure. One of Jian's co-conspirators, caught by the palace dogs as he attempted to sneak into the Empress's chambers during the distraction of the festival. "Your Majesty," the guard captain called out, "this man was found with these." He held up lock-picking tools and a detailed map of the palace's private wing. Before anyone could react, Ming the parrot swooped down from the rafters, landing on the railing before the Emperor. In General Jian's perfect voice, he squawked, "Once we have the Empress's jewels, the northern garrisons will support our coup. The Emperor will be dead before winter." Gasps echoed through the pavilion. Jian lunged forward, his face contorted with rage. "Lies! That bird is merely mimicking nonsense!" But Ming was not finished. Switching to Lady May's voice, he continued, "And what of your pet-keeper wife?" Then back to Jian's voice. "She suspects nothing, my sweet lotus blossom. She is useful for... now. Her position gives me access." The Emperor rose slowly from his throne, his expression thunderous. "General Jian, explain yourself." "Your Majesty, this is absurd," Jian protested, looking around wildly. "You would take the mimicry of a bird as evidence? The animal has clearly been trained to say these things." "Not just the bird," I stepped forward, my voice stronger than it had ever been. "The evidence speaks for itself." At my words, a coordinated animal assault began. Monkeys dropped from the rafters, landing on tables where they deposited stolen documents, Jian's plans, letters to co-conspirators, maps marked with troop movements. Cats dragged forward small items taken from Lady May's quarters, tokens Jian had given her, notes written in his hand professing eternal love. Most damning of all, the old tortoise show pushed forward a small imperial seal, one missing from the Emperor's private study for weeks, found hidden among Jian's possessions by my loyal monkey spies. As guards moved to surround Jian, he drew his sword. "This is madness. You would believe animals over your most loyal general?" "The animals have no reason to lie," the Emperor replied coldly. You, it seems, have every reason. Jian looked wildly around the pavilion, seeking escape. Finding none, he grabbed me, holding his blade to my throat. Order them to stand down, or your precious pet keeper dies. I felt the cold metal against my skin, but remained calm. This, too, I had anticipated. A piercing cry came from above. The Emperor's falcon plummeted from the sky, talons extended. It struck Jian's arm with such force that he dropped both sword and hostage, howling in pain as blood seeped through his ceremonial sleeve. Palace guards swarmed forward, subduing the general as he cursed and struggled. Across the pavilion, Lady Yar. May attempted to flee but found her path blocked by growling palace dogs. "Bring them both before me," the Emperor commanded. As the conspirators were forced to their knees, the Emperor turned to me. I stood calmly stroking Ming's feathers as the parrot settled on my shoulder. "It seems we owe you and your extraordinary friends a great debt, little bird," he said, using my nickname with new respect. I bowed deeply. "The animals serve your majesty with unwavering loyalty, just as I do." "And your husband?" The Emperor's gaze was penetrating. "You must have known his true nature for some time. I discovered his betrayal recently, your majesty, but I needed proof that even you could not dismiss." The Emperor nodded slowly. "A bitter position for any wife. Yet you chose the empire over your own heart." "My heart was already broken when I learned the truth," I replied, my eyes briefly meeting Jian's hateful glare. This was justice, not revenge. But we both knew it was both. Winter settled over the imperial city, blanketing the palace gardens in pristine white. In the aftermath of the autumn festival, much had changed. General Jian and Lady May languished in separate prison cells, awaiting their execution for high treason. The northern conspiracy had been dismantled, its members scattered or captured. And I, once merely the Emperor's pet keeper, now held the title of Imperial Guardian of Harmony. A position created specifically for me, with authority over not just the menagerie, but palace security as well. "The animals see what humans often miss," the Emperor had explained when conferring the honor. "And you, little bird, hear what they see." On this particular morning, I made my way through the snow-covered gardens to a small, heavily guarded structure set apart from the main palace. The guards bowed respectfully as I approached, opening the door without question. Inside, the cell was Spartan but not cruel. A cot, a table, a small window too narrow for escape. Jian sat on the edge of the bed, his once resplendent form now diminished in simple prison garb. "Come to gloat?" he asked without looking up. "I came to inform you that your execution has been scheduled for tomorrow's dawn," I replied evenly. "The Emperor thought you should know." Now Jian raised his head, his eyes burning with hatred. "You think you have won? A woman who talks to animals, playing at power?" "I am not playing, Jian." I stepped closer, my voice dropping to ensure only he could hear. "I wanted you to know exactly how you were defeated, not by palace guards or imperial spies, but by creatures you considered beneath notice. The monkeys you shooed away, the cats you kicked, the birds you ignored. They were my eyes, my ears, and ultimately, my weapons." "Impossible," he whispered, but doubt crept into his expression. "You married me for my position, never bothering to understand my gift." A small smile touched my lips. "A costly oversight." From my sleeve, I produced a small bundle of papers. The letters he had written to Lady May, recovered by my animal spies. "Your co-conspirators have all confessed, hoping for mercy. None will be granted." Jian lunged suddenly, his hands grasping for my throat, but I stepped back smoothly. From the shadows, a low growl emerged as one of the Emperor's guard dogs stepped into view, teeth bared. "Even now, you underestimate them," I said softly. I turned to leave, but Jian's desperate voice stopped me. Xiaoniao, please. We were happy once. For the love we shared. We never shared love, I cut him off. You shared ambition with your mistress. With me, you shared only lies. Outside, the winter air felt cleansing. Ming waited on a nearby branch, fluttering down to perch on my shoulder. Did you get what you needed, mistress? The parrot asked in my mind. Closure, I replied, stroking his bright feathers. And confirmation. Together we walked toward the main palace, where the emperor awaited my counsel on new security measures. The animals of the imperial grounds watched me pass. Cats emerged from warm hideaways. Birds circled overhead. Even Fu the panda lifted his head in acknowledgement. Where once I had been defined by my marriage to a respected general, now I stood alone, my authority earned through loyalty and an extraordinary gift. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed me had instead forged something stronger. A woman who understood her own power, who had found family not in a treacherous husband, but in the creatures others overlooked. That evening, after completing my duties, I visited the ancient tortoise show, bringing him choice vegetables as thanks for his wisdom. Your heart is lighter, the old tortoise observed. The bitterness fades. Not entirely, I admitted, but I no longer let it define me. And tomorrow? When he is gone? I gazed across the moonlit garden, toward the distant mountains where spring would eventually return. Tomorrow I continue building something new, something entirely my own. From the highest tower, the palace cats kept watch. In the aviary, birds sang songs of my triumph. In the quiet pool, fish swam in patterns that spelled my name in secret ripples. And throughout the imperial grounds, animals large and small pledged silent loyalty to me, the woman who understood them. The emperor's guardian, reborn through betrayal into my true strength. The day of Jian's execution dawned clear and cold. I did not attend. There was no satisfaction to be found in watching a man's final moments, even one who had betrayed me so thoroughly. Instead, I spent the morning with Fu the panda, brushing his thick fur as he munched contentedly on fresh bamboo. You never liked him, I said softly, scratching behind Fu's ears. The panda rumbled in agreement, his dark eyes wise and knowing. You saw what I was too blind to see. A sparrow landed on a nearby branch, chirping urgently. The news spread quickly through the animal network. It was done. Jian was gone. I felt a curious emptiness where rage had lived. Not grief, not exactly, but the absence of purpose that comes when revenge is finally complete. I had spent months consumed by the need to expose Jian's treachery. Now that justice had been served, what remained? The emperor summoned me that afternoon. He sat not on his formal throne, but in his private study, surrounded by scrolls and maps. Age had carved deeper lines into his face since the autumn festival, but his eyes remained sharp. Little bird, he greeted me. Sit. We have matters to discuss. I took the offered seat, acutely aware that few were granted such casual audience, with the dragon throne. Your husband's death closes one chapter, but the empire's story continues, he said, studying my face. The northern provinces remain restless. Lady May's father has pledged loyalty, but words are wind. You do not trust him, I observed. I trust very few these days. The emperor sighed. Which is why I have a proposition for you. He outlined his plan. I would travel to the northern provinces as his personal envoy, ostensibly to oversee imperial menageries there, but in truth to observe and report. My animals would be my eyes and ears, gathering intelligence no human spy could access. The northerners will underestimate you, the emperor said. A woman, a widow, one who talks to animals. They will see what Jian saw, a useful fool, never suspecting your true purpose or power. And if I refuse? I asked, though I already knew my answer. Then you remain Imperial Guardian, with my gratitude. His gaze softened. I do not forget. Loyalty, little bird. The choice is yours. That night, I consulted with Ming and the oldest palace cat, a scarred tomcat named Shadow, who had roamed the imperial grounds for 15 years. The north will be cold, Ming warned, preening his feathers anxiously. The birds there sing different songs. And the cats are wild, Shadow added, his one good eye gleaming in the lamplight. Not like us palace dwellers. All the more reason. I need you both with me, I replied, scratching Shadow behind his tattered ear. New allies to make, new languages to learn. In truth, the prospect of leaving the palace both frightened and exhilarated me. I had never traveled beyond the capital city. My world had been defined by these walls, these gardens. But Jian's betrayal had already shattered one cage. Perhaps it was time to leave another. Spring arrived, melting winter's grip on the imperial city. My preparations were complete, my animal companions selected with care. Ming, of course, would accompany me, along with Shadow and two of the cleverest monkeys. Smaller creatures would join us along the journey, recruited by my current friends. The night before my departure, I made one final visit to the Imperial Gardens. The cherry blossoms had just begun to open, their delicate pink petals catching the moonlight. Here, Jian had first courted me with pretty words and false promises. Here, I had been a different woman, naive and eager for love. You will not find what you seek by looking backward, came Shu's ancient voice. The tortoise had somehow known I would come, positioning himself along the garden path. I am merely saying goodbye, I told him, kneeling to stroke his weathered shell. Not to the garden, Shu observed. To the woman you were? I smiled, acknowledging the truth in his words. She served her purpose, but her time is past. And what of the woman you are becoming? What does she seek in the north? The question gave me pause. Revenge had driven me for so long that its absence left a void. The Emperor needed a spy, yes, but what did I need? Purpose, I finally answered. Not defined by Jian or his betrayal. Something of my own making. Shu nodded slowly, his ancient eyes reflecting starlight. The animals will help you find it, as they always have. But remember, little bird, your gift goes beyond merely hearing our voices. You see value in creatures others dismiss. You recognize strength in the overlooked. I considered his words carefully. As I was overlooked. Until you claimed your power, Shu agreed. There are others like you in the world. Not with your specific gift, perhaps, but those who are underestimated, overlooked, used by men like Jian. You think I should find them? Help them? I think your purpose will find you if you remain open to it. The tortoise blinked slowly. I have lived many human lifetimes, little bird. The ones who find true fulfillment are rarely those who seek power for its own sake, but those who use their unique gifts to create something lasting. I left the garden with Shu's wisdom echoing in my thoughts. The old tortoise would not accompany me north, his ancient bones too set in the rhythms of the imperial garden, but his perspective traveled with me nonetheless. Dawn broke over the eastern walls as my traveling party assembled. In the palace courtyard, 4 imperial guards would escort me, though they knew only the official purpose of my journey. My true companions, my animal allies, attracted curious glances from the soldiers as they settled into specially designed carrying cases. The Emperor himself came to see me off, an honor that caused whispers among the courtiers gathering to watch. Remember, little bird, he said quietly, for my ears alone. Trust your instincts and the voices only you can hear. Send word through the Falcon network we have established. I bowed deeply. I will not fail you, Your Majesty. I know. His weathered hand rested briefly on my shoulder. You have already proven your loyalty under the most difficult circumstances. Now prove your wisdom." As we passed through the great palace gates, Ming shifted restlessly in his traveling cage. "New adventures," he squawked, excitement overcoming his earlier reservations. "New songs to learn." "New mice to chase," Shadow added from his cushioned basket. I smiled, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders with each step away from the palace. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger perhaps, but also possibility. The woman who returned, if I returned at all, would not be the same one who left. The northern road stretched before us, winding through green hills toward distant mountains. Behind us, the imperial city grew smaller, the palace that had been my entire world reduced to a gleaming point on the horizon. Jian had seen me as a stepping stone to power, a convenient tool for his ambitions. In doing so, he had inadvertently set me on a path to discover my own strength. His betrayal had broken me, yes, but from those broken pieces, I had built something stronger. Not just the emperor's guardian or the widow of a traitor, but Xiao Niao, the woman who spoke with animals, who turned whispers into weapons, who refused to remain a victim. The road ahead might be uncertain, but for the first time, it was truly mine to choose. The northern provinces were as different from the imperial city as night from day. Where the capital was ordered and refined, the north was wild and rugged. Mountains cut jagged lines against the sky, and forests of pine and oak spread like dark blankets across the valleys. The people, too, were different. Harder, more direct, suspicious of outsiders, especially those from the imperial court. We arrived in Beilin, the largest city in the Northern Territory, after 2 weeks of travel. Governor Wei, Lady May's father, greeted us at the city gates with a forced smile that did not reach his eyes. "Lady Xiao Niao," he bowed, just deeply enough to satisfy protocol and not a fraction more. "We are honored by your presence. The imperial menagerie has been prepared according to the emperor's instructions." "I look forward to seeing it," I replied, matching his cool tone. This man had likely known of his daughter's affair with my husband, perhaps even encouraged it to further their treasonous plans. Now his daughter was executed as a traitor, and I, the widow she had helped betray, stood before him as the emperor's representative. Governor Wei's residence was a fortress rather than a palace, built of gray stone with high walls and watchtowers. My quarters were comfortable but isolated, positioned in the east wing far from the main hall where the governor conducted business. "To give you privacy," explained the servant who showed me to my rooms, though the true purpose was obvious. They wanted me contained, controlled, my movements easily monitored. As soon as we were alone, I released Ming from his cage. The parrot flew immediately to the window, surveying our new surroundings with sharp eyes. "Guards at every entrance," he reported. 4 in the courtyard, 2 at your door." Shadow the cat stretched lazily before slipping under the door to explore. The monkeys remained with me, unpacking my belongings with careful hands. That night, I attended a formal dinner in my honor. Governor Wei introduced me to local officials and military commanders, all men who regarded me with thinly veiled skepticism. "The emperor's pet keeper," one commander remarked, wine loosening his tongue. "I expected someone more imposing." "Animals respond to gentleness, not force," I replied mildly. "Much like people, in my experience." "Yet you uncovered your husband's treason," another official commented. "That required a certain ruthlessness, did it not?" I met his gaze steadily. "It required paying attention to what others overlooked, a skill I have spent my life cultivating." Over the following weeks, I established a routine. Mornings were spent in the northern menagerie, caring for the animals there and slowly earning their trust. Afternoons I devoted to official duties, inspecting the imperial hunting preserves, or advising on the care of the governor's prized horses. Evenings often brought formal dinners or entertainment, where I watched and listened from the shadows. But the real work happened through my animal network. Shadow mapped the fortress's secret passages, discovering hidden rooms where the governor met with visitors who never used the main gates. Ming learned to imitate the governor's voice perfectly, allowing us to understand conversations held behind closed doors. Birds from the forest carried messages to and from the capital, maintaining my communication with the emperor. I learned that Governor Wei maintained a careful balance, presenting loyalty to the imperial throne while secretly fostering northern independence. He collected excessive taxes, sending the required portion to the capital while hoarding the rest to build his own army. Weapons were being stockpiled in caves beyond the city walls, reported by mountain foxes who had made friends with Shadow. Most concerning of all, I discovered through a conversation repeated by Ming that the governor had made contact with foreign powers across the northern border, seeking allies for a potential rebellion. The emperor grows old. Governor Wei had told his military commander during a private meeting. His heir is but a child. The time approaches when the North need no longer bow to the South. I recorded all this information carefully, encrypting it in messages that appeared to be simple reports about animal care before sending them to the capital via Falcon messengers. The Emperor's responses were equally disguised, instructions hidden, within official correspondence about the imperial menagerie. 3 months into my stay, Governor Wei invited me to accompany him on a hunting expedition. To honor our distinguished guest, he announced at dinner, though his eyes remained cold and calculating. Lady Xiaoniao must see the famous northern tigers in their natural habitat. I sensed a trap but could not refuse without arousing suspicion. I would be honored, I replied, though I prefer to observe animals rather than hunt them. Of course, he smiled thinly. Your sensibilities are well known. That night, Shadow returned from his prowling with troubling news. They do not plan for you to return from this hunt, the cat reported, his tail twitching anxiously. I heard the governor telling his captain to ensure an accident befalls you in the forest. An unfortunate encounter with a tiger, perhaps? I suggested grimly. Or a fall from a mountain path, Shadow confirmed. Either would serve their purpose. I spent the night preparing. Through my window, I called to the local birds, requesting their aid in the coming days. I sent a falcon to the emperor with encrypted warnings about my situation and the governor's true intentions, and I instructed Ming on what to do if I did not return. The hunting party departed at dawn, 20 men including the governor and his most trusted guards. I rode in their midst, dressed in hunting clothes provided by the governor, a bow I barely knew how to use strapped to my saddle. As we entered the dense forest, I reached out with my mind to the creatures who called these woods home. Squirrels and rabbits, deer and foxes, birds of every kind. I felt their presence all around us, watching, waiting for my signal. The governor led us deeper into the wilderness, up winding paths toward more rugged terrain. I noted how the guards positioned themselves, always keeping me surrounded, hands never far from their weapons. By midday, we reached a rocky outcropping overlooking a steep valley. The perfect vantage point to spot tigers, Governor Wei explained, gesturing for me to approach the edge. They often sun themselves on the rocks below. I dismounted, moving cautiously toward the precipice. The drop was dizzying, hundreds of feet down to jagged rocks below. A single push would be all it took. Beautiful, is it not? The governor asked, coming to stand beside me. Breathtaking, I agreed, sensing the guards moving into position behind us. The emperor would be most impressed by your territory, Governor. Wei. The emperor, he scoffed, dropping all pretense, sits on his throne in the south, knowing nothing of northern strength. Your husband understood this. He would have ruled these lands well, with my daughter at his side. Before he betrayed her too? I suggested. Jian's loyalty extended only to himself. The governor's face hardened. A trait we northerners do not share. Our loyalties run deep, Lady Xiaoniao. Unfortunately for you, they do not run to the T. Imperial throne. I heard the whisper of steel as swords were drawn behind me. The moment had arrived. I smiled. A pity your animals do not share your convictions. Before the governor could respond, I whistled sharply, 3 distinct notes that echoed across the valley. The forest erupted in chaos. Birds swarmed from the trees by the hundreds, diving at the guards, pecking at eyes and faces. Deer crashed through the underbrush, spooking the horses, which reared and bolted in panic. From the rocks above, mountain cats leapt down, snarling and clawing. In the confusion, I moved swiftly, ducking behind a boulder as guards slashed wildly at the air, trying to fend off the avian assault. Governor Wei bellowed orders that went unheeded as his men scattered, pursued by the forest's furious inhabitants. A large crow landed beside me, its black eyes intelligent and fierce. "The path to the west," it cawed. "Follow the stream. Friends wait there." I slipped away from the chaos, following the crow's directions down a hidden trail that wound alongside, a mountain stream. Behind me, the sounds of the governor's hunting party in disarray gradually faded. After an hour of careful descent, I reached a small clearing where 3 horses waited, held by a young woman dressed in rough forest garments. "Lady Xiaoniao," she bowed slightly. "The Emperor sends his regards." "You are Imperial?" I asked, surprised. She smiled. "One of many placed in the north after your warnings reached the capital. We have been waiting for the governor to reveal his true intentions." "He just tried to kill the Emperor's envoy," I pointed out. "I would say his intentions are quite clear." "Indeed. And the falcon with your final evidence reached the capital yesterday. The Emperor's army marches north as we speak." I mounted one of the waiting horses. "Then we should not keep them waiting." As we rode toward the rendezvous point where Imperial forces would soon arrive, I glanced back at the forest that had just saved my life. Birds circled overhead, following our progress. In the distance, I heard wolves howling, spreading news of the coming conflict. Even here, hundreds of miles from the Imperial city, the animals had answered my call. Not because I controlled them, but because I had always shown them respect when others showed none. Jian had married me for my position, never understanding that my true power lay not in my proximity to the Emperor, but in the allies no one else could see or hear. Governor Wei had made the same mistake, dismissing me as a mere pet keeper, a weak woman easily disposed of. Both men had learned too late that those deemed powerless often wield power of a different kind. The kind that brings empires crashing down or saves them from destruction. The Imperial army arrived with the rising sun, 10,000 strong, their crimson banners unfurling against the northern sky. I watched from a hillside as they surrounded Beilin, cutting off all escape routes before a single warning could be sounded. General Zhao, the Emperor's most trusted military commander, listened intently as I detailed the layout of the governor's fortress, the hidden weapon caches, the secret passages mapped by shadow during our months of surveillance. "Your intelligence is impressively thorough, Lady Xiaoniao," the general remarked, studying the maps I had drawn. "Our spies confirmed your reports, but none managed to penetrate the inner workings of the governor's household as you did." "None of your spies could speak with the mice in the walls," I replied simply. "Or the birds at the window." The general nodded thoughtfully. "A unique advantage indeed." The battle for Beilin was swift and decisive. Imperial forces breached the city, walls at strategic points identified by my animal allies. Governor Wei's forces, caught unprepared and outmaneuvered, surrendered before midday. The governor himself attempted to flee through a tunnel Shadow had discovered months earlier, only to find Imperial soldiers waiting at the exit. I stood beside. General Zhao as the governor was brought before us, bound and seething with fury. When he saw me, his face contorted with rage and disbelief. "You," he spat. "My daughter died because of you. Your daughter died because she committed treason. I corrected him calmly. As did my husband. As did you. How? He demanded. How did you evade my hunters? How did you know of our plans? I smiled slightly. I am the Emperor's pet keeper, Governor Wei. Did you think the animals of the North would be any less loyal to me than those of the Imperial City? The realization dawned in his eyes, followed quickly by bitter understanding of his own blindness. Like Jian before him, he had dismissed my gift as inconsequential, never grasping its true power until too late. As the governor was led away to face imperial justice, Ming landed on my shoulder, his blue feathers iridescent in the sunlight. We won, the parrot announced proudly. Just like before. Yes, I stroked his head gently. Just like before. But this victory felt different. With Jian, my actions had been driven by personal betrayal, a need to avenge my broken heart. Here in the North, I had acted not from wounded pride but from duty, using my unique abilities to protect the Empire from real threat. In the weeks that followed, I remained in Beilin, helping General Zhao establish new governance for the northern territories. The Emperor appointed a loyal official as the new governor, but with imperial troops stationed permanently in the region and a network of spies established throughout the province. Your animal friends will continue to be our eyes and ears in the north, General Zhao told me as we walked through the now peaceful city streets. But the Emperor requests your return to the capital. He has a new assignment for you. I was not surprised. My success in uncovering Governor Wei's conspiracy had proven the value of my unusual talents beyond caring for the imperial menagerie. I had become something new in the Emperor's service. Not quite a spy, not quite a diplomat, but something uniquely powerful. The journey south was far grander than my northward travel had been. I rode now with an imperial escort, honored as the woman who had helped prevent civil war. In villages along the way, people gathered to catch a glimpse of the famous pet keeper who could speak with animals, whispers of my role in exposing two separate treasonous plots having spread throughout the empire. Ming reveled in the attention, performing tricks for admiring crowds while Shadow remained characteristically aloof, watching from the shadows with his one good eye. The monkeys capered and played, accepting treats from children who had never seen such creatures before. I observed it all with quiet amusement, still accustoming myself to this new position of respect and recognition. For most of my life, I had been overlooked, valued only for my ability to care for the Emperor's pets. Now songs were already being composed about my exploits, each more exaggerated than the last. When we finally reached the Imperial City, I found it changed. Or perhaps I was the one transformed. The palace that had once been my entire world now seemed merely one part of a vast empire I had helped to preserve. The gardens where Jian had courted me with false promises held no more power to cause pain. The Emperor received me in his private study rather than the formal throne room, a sign of special favor. Little bird, he greeted me, using my old nickname with new warmth. You have served the Empire with remarkable skill. I bowed deeply. I merely used the gifts I was given, Your Majesty, and in doing so, prevented civil war. He gestured for me to sit. The Northern conspiracy was more dangerous than even I had suspected. Without your warning, we might have faced a full rebellion by spring. For a moment, we sat in companionable silence, the old Emperor and the pet keeper who had become something more. I have been considering your future role, he finally said. Your talents are wasted on merely tending animals, yet they are uniquely suited to a particular kind of service. He outlined his proposal. I would establish a new division of Imperial intelligence, one that utilized animal allies throughout the Empire as informants and messengers. I would train others with affinities for animals, creating a network unlike any other in the world. Not all will have your gift of true communication, the Emperor acknowledged, but even those who merely understand animal behavior better than most can be valuable assets. I considered the offer carefully. It meant power, real power, beyond anything I had ever imagined for myself. It meant purpose that would outlast both the Emperor and myself. "I accept, Your Majesty," I said finally, "with one condition." His eyebrows raised slightly, unused to conditions from his subjects. "And that would be?" "The animals must be treated as allies, not tools. They must be protected, respected, and rewarded for their service." A slow smile spread across the Emperor's weathered face. "I would expect nothing less from you, little bird." In the years that followed, I built my unique network across the Empire. Young men and women with special connections to animals were brought to the Imperial City for training. I taught them what I could, though none possessed my specific ability, to understand animal speech. Still, they learned to observe, to respect, to work alongside creatures most people barely noticed. My life became one of purpose and satisfaction beyond anything Jian could have offered me. Where he had sought power through treachery and bloodshed, I found influence through loyalty and understanding. The broken heart he left behind had healed into something stronger, wiser, more compassionate. On the 10th anniversary of my appointment, as Imperial Spy Master, I returned to the furthest corner of the palace gardens, where ancient Shou still basked in the sunlight beside his pond. "You have traveled far from the pet keeper I once knew," the tortoise observed as I knelt beside him, "both in distance and in spirit." "Thanks to your wisdom," I acknowledged, offering him a particularly succulent lotus root. "No," Shu corrected, gently. "Thanks to your own strength. Jian's betrayal could have destroyed you. Instead, you used it to forge yourself anew." I considered this as I watched palace life continue around us. In the distance, my newest trainees worked with falcons, establishing flight patterns for urgent messages. Nearby, a young woman who showed particular promise sat quietly, attempting to gain the trust of a suspicious fox recently brought from the mountains. "Everything changed because he betrayed me," I mused. "Everything changed because you refused to remain a victim," Shu countered. "Many are betrayed. Few transform their pain into such purpose." As the sun began to set over the Imperial City, I realized the truth in the ancient tortoise's words. Jian had seen me as nothing more than a stepping stone, a convenient tool for his ambitions. In his arrogance, he had overlooked the quiet strength in the woman who whispered to animals. His betrayal had broken my heart. Yes. But from those broken pieces I had built something far greater than either of us could have imagined. Not just the Emperor's pet keeper, not just a widow seeking revenge, but a woman who had found her own path to power and purpose. Jian was long gone, his name fading from memory, mentioned only as a footnote in the story of my rise. His ambition had brought him briefly to power's threshold, but in the end, he had been utterly undone by creatures he deemed beneath notice. And I, reborn through his betrayal, had flourished in ways neither of us could have foreseen. With allies he had been too blind to recognize. The palace animals, once my only friends, now formed the foundation of an empire's security. The girl who talked to birds had become the woman who changed the very nature of imperial power. All because a man had made the grave mistake of underestimating both me and the creatures I loved.